Welcome to the Research Hub podcast. I'm Chad Yarvitz, and in this episode, we're digging into the power of connection, confidence and community, and how it all shows up through fitness. The Research Hub exists to translate research into action, turning science-backed insights into practical strategies for coaches, gym operators, and anyone leading people through fitness. Whether it's mental health, strength, cardiovascular training, or active aging, we're focused on what really matters on the training floor. I'm your co-host, Chad Yarvitz. I own and operate Explicit Fitness in San Diego. We've been in operation since 2010. I've been with Matrix Fitness. I've been a fitness model. I've invented a fitness device, and I've been in this industry for quite some time. So I'm excited to have this conversation with you and share some insights with an amazing co-host that I got to meet recently, Rick Muhr. We had a conversation for a short period before this podcast, and his story blew me away. I'd like to turn it over to him now so he can introduce himself before we get into the conversation. Rick, go ahead and take it away for me.
All right. Thank you so much, Chad. I appreciate that introduction. Coach Rick Muhr, I'm a Boston Marathon coach. I've been here 30 years in New England, and I've had the honor and privilege of coaching over 20,000 runners to the successful completion of a marathon. Although I'm focused primarily on Boston, I'm also focused on the world marathon majors, which are Berlin, Chicago, London, New York, Tokyo, and now Sydney, Australia. I'm really looking forward to sharing my insight as a running coach and also listening to Chad's perspective on group training, all the dynamics of group training, and what we have seen recently, especially post-COVID, in terms of engagement and the value of group training.
Yeah, that's great. And, before we go into like our personal approaches to fitness, Rick, what really caught me was your story. And I know you've probably shared it hundreds of times, but I think for our listeners, it's important for them to kind of hear what brought you to where you are today and why you have a successful coaching business and why you can relate to people from all walks of life that are really trying to improve their lives or find themselves again or working through struggle. And we see that in a marathon, right? It's you live a whole
Yes.
lifetime in a marathon. And I think your position and your background and what you've gone through, it just positions you as such an amazing coach. So if you wouldn't mind, can you just kind of share your story a little bit?
I've been a runner for 50 years. I've been a coach for 30. And I think one of the most significant experiences I've had during that entire year was just 3 years ago. In addition to being a runner, a running coach, I'm also a cyclist. And I was out for a 100-mile bike ride, and I unfortunately was hit by a car head on. I spent 2 weeks in intensive care, 4 weeks in trauma. Then I spent almost a month at Boston Spalding Rehabilitation Hospital. Some of my injuries, real quickly, were traumatic brain injury, a collapsed lung, broken clavicle, 10 broken ribs, 4 compression fractures, dislocated shoulder, and a shattered humerus. And I remember the moment, literally the moment I was hit. I was literally fighting for my life and also fighting for my next breath. And even at that moment, I thought, I am going to come back from this. I knew that I probably wouldn't be the same version of myself, but I was determined to be the best version of myself. And obviously, with all those weeks and months in the hospital, I had plenty of time to think about the abundance in my life, to be grateful for my life. And one of the lessons I really learned, Chad, was each of us, whether we realize it or not, we have the strength to dig deep within ourselves to find whatever it takes to confront and overcome whatever challenges we may face. It could be mental health, it could be addiction, it could be physical, mental, emotional. I know, because I've had a front row seat to this journey, that each one of us has the ability to dig so deep within ourselves to find the strength, the courage, and determination to overcome almost anything. And as a brand ambassador for Matrix Fitness, I've had the pleasure, the honor to travel the country and talk about the power of positivity. Our attitudes are the one thing that we have complete control over. And oftentimes when we're challenged with something, our attitude is really tested. And so is our mental health resilience. And so now I'm totally committed beyond my coaching to help people believe that they can do anything that they want in life, that they can overcome anything that they're confronted with. And so it's really tied to my group training. I used to always talk about how other people were so inspiring to me because I watched them fight cancer, lose children, all sorts of challenges. But now, after experiencing something myself, I now can speak in the first person about overcoming challenges. One of the greatest blessings of my accident was they discovered that I had kidney cancer. And when I went to Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, my surgeon made it very clear that if I did not have this accident, that kidney cancer would have taken my life. So that incidental finding because of the accident was one of the greatest blessings. And while this situation was very difficult for me and my family, it truly was one of the greatest blessings because it helped me to become far more grateful for everything in my life, the abundance in my life, my health, my family, my friends, and my community, which I know we're going to talk quite a bit about our respective communities. So the blessing that I came away with was just having a new perspective on helping other people. I think that as coaches and trainers, we rise when we lift others. And so I'm hoping that will be the essence and the spirit of our conversation today.
I agree completely. And I think the thing that blew me away, one of the things that blew me away most about your story, Rick, not only your ability to bounce back, but the irony in that if you hadn't had that bad accident, they wouldn't have caught the cancer and you probably wouldn't
Yes,
be here today. And, it just kind of shifts your whole paradigm, it shifts your whole perspective on bad things that happen in life,
yes,
what setbacks, tragedies, things that cause grief, losses. I think that's what makes you such a powerful coach, and as well as myself, is that once you've gone through something so bad and you can see how there is a silver lining, as long as your attitude is good and you can see that good can come from bad situations, then you can turn any bad situation into something good. We're never going to escape the challenges. We're born into suffering to an extent. This life is
yes,
full of it. We're all going to experience loss. We're all going to experience setbacks, failures, broken bones, pain, sorrow, whatever it is. But if you can have an unstoppable resilience to be able to bounce back from anything and you decide that's what you're going to do, no matter what life throws at you, you'll be successful in whatever you do. And I think both you and I, with our experience and life experience and in business, we're best at coaching that more so than being fitness professionals, educated with whatever degrees and licenses and certifications we have. It's that ability to connect to the person on the deepest level to be able to inspire them to overcome whatever's in their way.
I agree. Well said.
Uh, a little background about me. I'm not trying to compare stories because mine's nothing like yours. But when I was 13, I got two fractures in my spine, my fourth and fifth lumbar vertebrae. I was a two-sport athlete, and I was told that I'd never play sports again, and that it was over for me, and I was going to have to get a spinal fusion, and that I needed to kind of hang it up. But sports was my whole life, and I was devastated, and I didn't know what to do, and I cried myself to sleep. I couldn't sleep in a bed. I had to sleep on the floor, and I had to walk away from sports and skateboarding and snowboarding for over a year. And that's what led me into the fitness industry to do my own research because I refused to get surgery as a 13-year-old boy who was going to be limited in range of motion and movement for the rest of my life. And I refused to accept that I was now going to be unable to participate in sports at all in my life. So that's what led me down the path of getting into the fitness industry, building up core strength and being able to overcome a serious injury. And then I went on to compete as a professional athlete after that. So I think that is what's unique about your and my story, and what has led to this level of success and community and connection that we're able to share here today. And that's kind of the part that I think we should segue into is, there's a lot of people listening to this that are in the fitness profession or they're interested in it and they've been surrounded by it. They're athletes and they're contending with the fact that this is a very saturated market. There's a lot of people in the industry. There's a lot of fakes. There's a lot of fluff. With Instagram and there being the influencer lifestyle, there's just such a saturation of stuff that's not genuine. And so I believe that your and my success comes down to our genuine approach and our life experience.
Yes.
And so that kind of brings me to our group fitness setting that you and I both train in and kind of the power behind that. And so, a question I wanted to bring to you is what do you think is unique about the group training environment that allows for this energy and growth and connection to make not only your business successful, but group fitness in general successful?
Yeah, I really think the master link in the chain of success for group training is just this sense of community. If you ever studied the blue zones, these areas around the world where they have the highest concentration of octogenarians, people who live beyond 100, one of the things is sense of purpose, sense of belonging, and being part of a community. And when I think about my coaching as a marathon running coach or your training, your group training, that is the foundation of what we are all about, creating this community of like-minded people. Now, we all might be different in terms of our athletic abilities, the way that we look, what our values are, what our goals are, but coming together as almost like one team with one dream, and that dream being to realize the best version of ourselves, whatever that is. That, for me, is the beauty of what I do, because I basically train people for a marathon for 4.5 months, and I meet them only once a week for almost 20 weeks. And I had a Division I athlete come to me after the Boston Marathon, and she said, "Coach Rick, I'm a Division I athlete. I don't need coaching. I've been coached my entire life. But one of my teammates asked me to come to your training, and I never expected it to change me as a person or to change my life. Honestly, it had very little to do with me, Chad. It had everything to do with the dynamic of all these people coming together to train for the Boston Marathon. She never missed a week of training. She was the shining star. She was such a great example of positivity, commitment, determination. And she said at the end of the Boston Marathon, this journey changed my life. It changed my self-perception. It changed how I viewed other people. I was always very quantitative. I based everything on time and performance. And what this group brought to me was the power of humanity. And I think that's something that we're all looking for. We just want to be listened to. We want to be acknowledged. We want to have a voice. And yes, we are focused on improving one's fitness or athletic performance. But I think you would agree, Chad, it transcends the athletic part of this. There's a spiritual component to it. It's an environment where people hopefully will feel safe, and maybe we can talk about some of the things that we do to help people feel safe, comfortable, and inspired. But in the beginning, when I became a coach, it was really all about my coaching. I wanted to share with people how much I knew about every aspect of running: nutrition, hydration, sleep, the X's and O's of training. And over time, I realized that that is such a small part of what we do as trainers and coaches. We're facilitators, bringing out the best in the human spirit. And so I'm interested in your perspective, but we can delve into this greater. But I think you should provide your perception of group training and the benefits.
Everything you said, you were answering my questions as you were saying it. And I think how you described it is the path of every fitness professional, probably most professionals in most industries, right? Is you go from having the tools and having the skills and having the education and needing to show the world that you have those
Yes.
skills and you have those capabilities and you are an authority in your field. And you get to a point where you've had your butt kicked enough by the industry that you're in and life, and you decide, well, that part doesn't really matter because there's millions of those people. Everyone can have there's hundreds and thousands of people that have more of an education than me, different experiences, but what they don't have is my personal experience, and what they don't necessarily have, maybe they do, is my personal care and love for
Yes.
helping people change and helping people grow and find themselves much like I was able to find the freedom psychologically and physically from whatever was holding them back. And you were talking about your D1 athlete that said that this was the best training experience of her life. Well, she's had the top-notch experience before she ever met you, but that yet your program was above and beyond it. And My question is to you is it's not about the pace and the frequency of training and the science behind what you're doing with your marathon runners. It's something about the culture that you cultivated and the energy that you bring and the way that you allow people to let their walls down and connect on a very human level. And that's kind of what I wanted to ask you is, do you have a method behind that, or is there an intake that you start with to get people to let the walls come down and show up as themselves and be able to connect with people on the drop of the hat?
Yeah, that's a great question. A little bit of background. Most of the runners that I coach are charity runners. They are representing 20 plus Boston based charities. And they're required to raise money not only to train for the Boston Marathon, which in my opinion is one, if not the most challenging marathons in the world. So they have to raise between $10,000 and $15,000 on top of actually training for the marathon. So they come to me um, to coach them. I don't really offer a lot of fundraising insight, but they come to me. It runs the gamut, Chad, from someone who I could take out on a track today and they couldn't complete one lap without walking, to someone who has qualified for the Boston Marathon multiple times and everything in between. So I have this first kickoff, and it's a melting pot of people. It's people who are very competitive, very athletic, personality type A's, to people who won't even make eye contact with me. I can tell that they're not confident, they're uncertain. They just don't feel like they could ever run a marathon, but they signed up for it. So now they are all in. And so the transformation from that first day to the marathon day, 4.5 months later, it's unbelievable. The transformation in that short period of time. And so for me, my methodology has always been very, very simple. I treat everyone the same. Male, female, overweight, underweight, unfit, extremely fit. I'm completely blind to that. And I do have people comment on that throughout training. They'll say, Coach Rick, you knew my name from the first time I came to training. Now I'm averaging about 300 runners every year for the Boston Marathon. So if you took a teacher with an average classroom of 30, I have 10 classrooms of students. I get to know their name and as much information as I can learn about them. I am like a sponge. I am storing information. I'm also using social media so I can go to their Instagram or their Facebook and I can learn things about them. And I just archive that. And when they come in the next week, I'll say, hello, Julia. I didn't realize you went to Boston College. And I'll make a connection. And those connections are powerful. And they're like building a foundation of trust. Every comment, every time you say their name, you're putting one more brick into that foundation of trust. And over time, people look forward to coming to training. I've had runners say to me, this is my church. This is where I come to worship, whether it's my church, my synagogue, wherever your place of worship is. They felt like this is important enough to me. And the diversity of this group is powerful to me because it's an incredible source of inspiration. So for me, it's very, very simple, Chad. My methodology is get to know every person I can. I want to understand what motivates them. I want to understand what scares them, what intimidates them, what is the greatest area of opportunity for growth for them. And once I have that information, as you know, that is the building block for an amazing partnership. And it's not a coach runner, it's two people totally united in this absolute spirit of humanity. And athletic performance becomes less important. It's still important, but it's not as important as really feeling like you have a voice, you're also being listened to, and you have someone that you can really trust. And I think that position as a coach and trainer is as sacred as being a parent of our two children. I take it just as serious. I feel like I have the same opportunity to mold that person. They could be in their 70s, and I still have an opportunity to change their perspective, to invigorate them for living with greater purpose. So it's not complicated, but Chad, when you ask me a question, I'm going to be like a engineer that you asked what time it is. I'm going to tell you exactly how the watch was built, and if I can remember, I'll tell you what time it is. But that's my methodology.
I think what's so special about part of what you just shared, it's group fitness, and especially the way that you approach it and the way that I try and approach it is it's this great equalizer, and
Yes.
it's this great stabilizer. And you've got a D1 athlete, and a lot of these people have been put on a pedestal. They're champions. They're very competitive. They have that edge about them, that type A
Yes.
personality that you're talking about, where they might even come off as abrasive in the beginning, where nobody else here even belongs in the race with them.
That's
And
right.
then you're gonna have people on the opposite end that are so insecure and lack so much confidence that, like you said, they're almost completely introverted. They don't want to even be they stand by themselves, they don't make eye contact. But by connecting with each individual and doing that integration and doing that intake and getting to know them on a personal level, it brings everyone to the center. It takes that high level champion athlete that might think that they're shit doesn't stink, and it brings them center. And you take that other person who feels like they don't have much self-worth and they don't have confidence, and now somebody cares about them. And then
Yes.
now those two people meet, and now they're entering into a culture where that's just what we do. We talk, and we talk about stuff that's not your accolades and not your failures, but what makes you human. Oh, you have kids? I have kids too. Oh, you live in the neighborhood? So do I. Have you been to the pub down the street? These
Yes.
are the things that create and foster the communities that we have seen grow and multiply, and literally people's lives change. And in the beginning, for myself, and I think based on how you described it too, I hung my hat on the physical changes that my clients would make, and that was it. You
Yes.
lost body fat, you're a success story. If you got a six pack, or you could punch harder, or you could run the mile in a shorter amount of time, I'm successful. I've done my job. But I saw more and more how that was such a small part for the people that were struggling outside of their physical pursuits and outside of the gym, whether it was with family or divorce or a loss of a loved one, or they have complications at their work. Oftentimes they'd hit that physical goal, and I would see them still be a complete mess. And it wasn't completing the package. And then I felt like, well, that feels like I didn't do my job because they're not feeling the way that I feel with fitness and nutrition and wellness and health. And so for myself, and maybe you as well, I think that's where things started to shift for me on an approach for my business, right? Is where this is much more than your physical results. This is much more than your marathon time. As cool as it is to get a sub 3 hour marathon, in the grand scheme of life, it doesn't mean anything
No.
if you can't also carry the stick everywhere else in your life and feel happy about what you're doing. So I don't know. It's just it's beautiful to hear how you do it and how you approach it. And I think for myself, I didn't really realize what that meant in the grand scheme. I didn't realize that this was going to change people's lives in a way where I see them 5, 10 years later, and the things that we've done together in our club, helping them create new habits and a better outlook on life. It trickles down into their kids. It trickles into their social circle. And now they're an inspiration, they're a leader, and they're doing something great for their small community. So the thing that we're doing creates these ripples in the lives of our clients, and so on and so forth. So it becomes something much bigger than the little club that I train out of, or the track
Yes.
that you're training out of.
Yeah, to me, it's very organic and holistic. I think you really captured the essence and spirit of this entire process. Part of creating a community, a safe and inspiring community for me, before each weekly run, I have a little area. I call it a dynamic warm-up area where you can do some movement, you could do foam rolling, some restorative yoga type movement. And to see the runners just get down on the floor and be with one another. Sometimes they're just sitting there listening and talking. They're not doing anything at all. But that is the building of a bond. that transcends the finish line of the Boston Marathon. These are lifelong friendships. I have had people come to training, meet, become married, have children. I never make those promises each year, but things like that happen all the time. No one has ever named their child Rick as much as I try to beg them. But on a serious note, it's that time before a workout where people are a little bit nervous. And then you fast forward through the run, and we get up to 20 miles before the Boston Marathon. But the real power takes place after the workout. We all know what it feels like after a workout. You're just euphoric. And I've always said about running, the best part of running is stopping. You know, it's the best part because of the sense of accomplishment. But then that same area that I described now becomes a recovery area where they're just so euphoric. They're refueling, within 30 minutes of every workout. I'm sure to have them refuel, rehydrate. But the sense of accomplishment, some of them will come in after our first 4-mile run and say, Coach Rick, that's the farthest that I've ever run. And then every week is a new personal best. So that incremental achievement is improved. Whether it's weights, push ups, whatever it is, I find that consistency and moderation in working out are really the cornerstone of progress. And I would also say that about life. Consistency and moderation. Just show up. Don't do anything seismic. Just show a little bit of compassion to your fellow human being. That is really what it's all about. And I get to see that. I'm sure you feel this way, Chad. We have a front row seat to one of the greatest shows in the entire world. And that is the transformation of the human spirit. You see that person who shows up that doesn't make eye contact, that is not very confident. I had a woman write to me one time before the internet existed. That's how long I've been coaching. And she wrote to me, and I still have this letter today, Chad. It was a handwritten note. And she said, Coach Rick, I know you're going to be shocked to hear from me because I never said a word in 4.5 months. But you may have noticed I showed up every week. And I just want you to know the power and the impact that you had on my life. And she went on to say, I'm a single mother of 3 little girls, and I'm in an abusive marriage, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. And by coming to your training, it gave me the strength and the confidence to leave my marriage because I didn't want my 3 little girls being raised to think that that was okay. That's powerful. I never take that for granted. I'm sure you have your own stories of change that people have experienced because they came to your workouts. When I wake up on a Saturday morning after 30 years of coaching, I'm like a little boy on Christmas morning because I'm going to work out with people and everyone represents a gift and a present to me. And what I want to do is open it up and discover how I can enjoy it, how I can impact them, and how together we can change the world. One of my greatest and favorite quotes is from Margaret Mead. She was this wonderful American anthropologist who said, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed people can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. And so when you think about your groups and when you begin training with them and when you end training with them, it's a complete transformation. And I think one common denominator is we emerge from these journeys with a greater commitment to serving others, whether it's our own children, could be the children of a next door neighbor who's a single parent working 2 or 3 jobs just to give hope and opportunity to their children. Whatever it is, I find that that's the greatest accomplishment, not just getting a finisher's medal at the Boston Marathon, but feeling like, yes, I just finished the Boston Marathon, but that's the first step in a much longer and more important journey of service to others. Do you find that with your group?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think it's people coming together, and what you were describing there with the lady who had the family problems, and your story, my story. the best part of ending a race is when you're done. There's something about collective suffering and
Yes.
voluntary collective suffering where these people, we come together to get uncomfortable, and we're doing it, voluntarily to achieve that. And then it's what you get after that. And it's the leaning into the suffering. And I think that takes us to a very deep spiritual level. But I think both you and I have really worked hard on leaning into suffering. And when you accept it and look forward to it and realize that it's part of life, and you know that there's always something good that comes from the surrender of suffering, and you can use it to empower yourself, and you can use it to grow, and you can use it to change. It's really the most powerful thing in the world when you know you can overcome this challenge that you've decided to put yourself through, this physical barrier, this emotional barrier, this mental barrier. And I think it all just creates this organic growth and power inside of people to show up day after day. Their legs are sore, their lungs hurt, and they're there again to train again, to improve their time, to take one step closer to get to the race that they're already nervous about, that they're not looking forward to, but they're doing it. So they're building this resilience, they're building this physical and mental strength that a lot of people don't realize carries on. It changes your neural pathways. It changes the way your brain functions. It changes your whole physiology. It changes your whole psychology. And I think that that's where I now hang my hat on. I don't care how much weight you lose. I don't care how much muscle you've gained or how ripped you are for the pool deck in the summertime. If I can see your strength and your happiness and your optimism change from that pessimistic standpoint that you walked in here on, and now you're a happy person that smiles genuinely and carries that into your relationships and into your job and back home for your family, I mean, there's nothing like it. There's nothing more valuable to me as a business owner than seeing that.
As I listened to you, you mentioned a few things like shared suffering, resilience. Those resonate with me. And it's ironic that, I'm sitting here listening, thinking, Chad is in the same place that I'm in. You know, I am I am so inspired when you talk about your experience because I'm living that same dream that, you know, I used to always talk about how many marathons I've run and what my personal best is. And I look back on that with such regret. I wish I would have known then what I know now. It's like a child that grows up, and you look back on your parents and you think, I used to think they were so annoying. And as I've gotten older, I realized how much they cared about me, how much they loved me, and how much they knew. And so I'm mindful of that when I have this group come to me every year to run the Boston Marathon. Their heart is full of hope and dreams of becoming a Boston Marathon finisher. But as their coach, I'm looking at each one of them very differently than that because it's a given to me that they're going to finish the marathon. For me, I want to know how much of an impact I can have on them about life, not running, but about life, improving their compassion, improving their engagement, living with greater purpose, living with greater meaning. I think since COVID, especially, Chad, I have seen a couple of things that concern me with people in general, even with my athletes. I think there is a lack of engagement, and that's where we come in because we create these opportunities for engagement. I also think there is a serious degree of self-isolation, and that goes hand in hand with engagement. And I also feel like there is a sense of entitlement about a lot of things that we have somehow lost our work ethic a little bit. We talk about our country being the strongest country in the world. I break it down to the person. Are you really working hard to achieve your goals? Are you rising above your comfort level? Are you getting comfortable, as you said? Are you getting comfortable being uncomfortable? Are you really giving it your best? And those are questions that I ask people, maybe not directly, but over time in very subtle ways. I will say to them after a hard workout, do you think you could have gone farther? And most people will say, I went as far as I could go. And I think mentally they're right. But if they had to go farther, they could. I see people at the finish line of marathons and Ironman triathlons, anything significant, and they collapse. They collapse right there. But I contend that if we move the finish line another 50 yards, they would collapse there. And so I do believe the power of the mind cannot be discounted because people will go as far as they think they can go and they stop. And I think it's our job to make them and help them realize they can go farther. And so that to me is like the beauty of group training, bringing everyone together and sharing that message. Every week I have a Zoom call with my runners, and it's wonderful to see them show up and want to learn.
Yeah, I think what's really important about what you just said is keeping a pulse on where society is at this time. And COVID did a number on everyone physically and mentally. And it did make people isolate more and made people more pessimistic and a lot less trusting of everyone, the government and each other and whatnot.
Yes.
I think that we have somewhat of a double-edged sword with technology, is that it's so beautiful. It's allowing you and I to talk right now. It's allowing us to connect better and quicker than ever, but it's also taking away from what makes us human, which is face to face, eye contact, body language, smell, touch, the actual essence of connection. And we have to be careful as fitness professionals, especially, to not get so carried away with the next cool tool, the next heart rate monitor, the next pace keeper, the next fitness app. We want to use these tools and we want to leverage technology, but we have to be careful to continue to do what you and I are doing, which is what matters, which is human connection and getting people to come together and find themselves through meeting other people. And it's, I don't know, it's great to see that there are companies that are doing it right. You know, you and I both work for Matrix, and this company focuses on quality connections, great equipment that empowers group training. I've had the Connexus in my facility before. I've done Sprint 8 on their cardio that Coach Phil created, and there's companies doing it right where they're giving us fitness professionals the tools and the equipment to do what you and I are trying to do. And so it's nice to see that there's people that get it when there's a lot of people that still don't, that haven't woken up yet.
I love the Matrix Fitness spirit, which is believe in better. I think we all inherently believe in better, but are we willing to put in the work, the time, the effort to realize the best version of ourselves? When I listen to you, Chad, I smile on my face and in my heart because what you are saying resonates with me. When it comes to technology, I have so many young people who think that every solution is found on their phone. And to a degree, a lot can be found on the phone. But there's one thing that you can never find on the phone, and that's what you were just describing, that personal connection, the touch. The power of the human touch is amazing. You know, when runners come to my first training, we fist bump, we shake hands. It doesn't take long before we're hugging. And, I'm always at mile 15 of the Boston Marathon, and that's a strategic decision because the most challenging 11 miles are ahead of them. And they always say to me, the first 15 miles were so hard, but my primary goal was just to get to you, Coach Rick, because I knew if I got to you, I could make it to the finish line. That belief that they have in me, that's nothing money can buy. That's hard-earned trust. You have that, and I know that you feel that it's sacred too, to have this opportunity to have such a significant impact on other people. But our legacy is when we pass that torch of compassion to them so that when they leave our group training, that they are looking for opportunities to empower other people the same way that maybe we've impacted them. And so it's really just this chain of a difference that we're making in the lives of other people. And that really is the fuel to keep me coaching as long as I have. I'll be 67 in July, and people are starting to ask, Coach Rick, how much longer? How much longer? I don't even think about stopping because as long as I have breath, I'm going to be coaching on some level. I may be in assisted living in the future, I don't know. I may not know my name, but I'm certainly going to always have this desire to connect with people. And so the connection and engagement, those are the two things that I hope our listeners will take away. I would love someday to attend one of your classes, one of your group trainings, and see you do what you do. And I would love someday for you to come to Boston and see what I do.
And, I was going to close by asking what you think our listeners can take away from this conversation, but I think you just wrapped it up in a perfect bow, and it's just being genuine and showing up for people and sharing your experience and being leading with love and defining yourself as a person who cares. And if you can show people that you care because you do and it's genuine, you're going to be successful. And your club or your dietitian business, whatever it might be, is going to flourish if you continue to care about others and care about them becoming better versions of themselves. So I think that's a great way to wrap it up. What do you think?
I agree. And I would just say, Chad, I've never met you in person. I've only spoken with you on these Zoom calls for maybe a collective 2 hours. And already I can see your gift. I can not only see it, I can feel it and I can experience it. And I would just say to you, it was really an honor for me to share this with you. I have a lot of respect for you, and I know you're having a significant impact on the lives of others. So just keep doing what you're doing. And together as a team at Matrix, we'll continue to do what we do. So thank you.
Thanks, Rick. I feel the same about you, man. I really appreciate our conversations. To all of you out there, thank you for joining us on the Research Hub. And Rick, thanks for sharing your wisdom with everyone today.
You're welcome. Thank you, Chad.